Welcome to Weapons and Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 199. Just about at the big 200, David. How you feel?
I'm feeling freaking optimistic, Dane. Don't ask me why. I've had a shit week, but you know what? 200 episodes in, and we've almost got the hang of this thing.
Almost 200 episodes in, and almost got the hang of it.
Correct.
A lot of almosts. WMD podcast can be found at any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X, the three of which we stream live on every Friday at 6 p.m. for those of you who are already here and know that. YouTube, X, and Rumble. So if you're following us on one, please go and follow us on all, especially if you're a YouTube-only person, because one day you might wake up and we won't be here. But today, David, what we're talking about this week, we're a little light on topics. I feel like that's probably my fault because in this crazy mixed up world, there should be plenty of things to choose from every week, but I was light. And so, we figured we'd talk about some TikTok beef and use it to riff on larger. That was Freudian slip on that one.
There you go. Pun intended, Dane. Well done.
Riff on some larger societal memes. But that societal meme that we're talking about today is the fact that leftism really is cultural entropy, isn't it, David?
Well, it would seem that would be the case, seeing as I had to look up entropy about 5 minutes before we actually went live here. So I wouldn't be caught out. But yeah, it seems as though they're not interested in bringing people together, even though that seems to be a part of their whole modus operandi of what they're telling you that they want to do. They want to help the poor. They want to make sure everyone gets a fair shot. They want to make sure everyone's included by excluding all the people that were there in the first place and forcing in people that weren't there at all. So again, what they say out of one side of their mouth often is the complete opposite of what actually the goal is intended for, or the intended goal is. So yeah, it just seems like it's a nice place to be if you don't have to think about what you say ever. I guess that's the nicest way I could put this before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this particular episode.
Exactly. And, not to leave any of the sane spacers, the memes in the lurch, and to provide that definition so they don't have to go searching themselves. Entropy is the second law of thermodynamics. And it states that the entropy of a closed or isolated system will always increase over time, or at least remain the same. Entropy is a measure of disorder, and it's based on the number of states a system can take on and the probabilities of those states. The law of entropy implies that systems naturally evolve towards thermodynamic equilibrium, where entropy is at its highest. It also states that it takes more energy to return a system to its original state than it did to create the disorder. Now, before we talk about that last part of the definition, I want to just sort of layman's terms, the rest of it is, in any sort of closed system, the tendency is towards disorder. Right? So order in thermodynamics is kind of the exception that proves the rule. If you have a closed system, the particles in that system are going to tend towards more chaos and disorder, and that's what entropy is. Now, that last part of the definition is kind of key for applying this concept to the often complex, muddy interpersonal relationships of human beings in a society, and especially in large, multi-hundred million person societies, is that last part about it also states that it takes more energy to return a system to its original state than it did to create the disorder, which means order is difficult. It takes energy to accomplish it. Disorder is the natural state, the easier way to go. So you have to really apply effort in the human context, but in the thermodynamic context, you have to apply energy to a system in order to create order out of chaos. And as the old, sort of adage, I think it's in several religions, but, that whole concept of as above, so below. When you take a look at societies and how they flourish, get to a point of peak, productivity and efficiency and standard of living for all the people living in the society, and then how they fall off to chaos and disorder, and how this seems to be cyclical throughout human history. It kind of really brings home that whole as above, so below thing. Even though we are conscious of our natural world and we can manipulate it in amazing ways. We are very much like, those inanimate particles that are all around us and fill the universe.
Well, Dane, seeing as we are stardust and we're forced into these meat sacks, how best describe, how should we break the ice of this entropic? Did I conjugate the verb we're at? Or
yes,
the noun?
I think so.
Entropic.
I don't know. And if we made it up ourselves, we'll just put it on a hat.
You're welcome. but anyway, so before we bury the lead anymore, let's just get one of the little tidbits that we conjured up for the memes this week. Let's launch that clip off.
Yeah, so here's an example of leftism being cultural entropy.
Okay, thank you.
I don't like how this video is painting all of these companies out to be bad and to villainize them for not having a product in their store that people are not buying. Now, I will say I'm glad that this creator was respectful to the employees that she was talking to. But the reason these companies are pulling these sizes from their stores or don't have them physically in store is not because the companies are fat phobic or because they have something against people who are overweight. It's because the need for these products is not big enough to warrant buying them in bulk and shipping them to their stores. And while America is getting bigger, the need for sizes above things like XXL represents a very, very small group of people. Their solution, rather than taking a loss, is saying, okay, well, they can order them online. But for some reason, that is not enough. Rather than getting on social media and villainizing companies while victimizing yourself, why don't we talk about the actual solutions to the problem you have encountered? Option 1, order your clothes online. Option 2, wait for Americans to get bigger, because we are, to the point where these companies won't lose money if they carry these sizes in store. Option 3, take a look in the mirror and see how you can develop healthier habits to get yourself out of this situation. None of these options here should include expecting a company to take a loss for you just because you don't like the solutions that were presented. Now look, I know everybody is on their own health journey and it doesn't happen overnight, but playing the victim only stops you from being able to take accountability for the actions that got you here in the first place.
Well said, Clarkson. Well said. Now, I want to be clear about a couple things on the front end. First of all, I don't really know either one of these creators. I don't follow either one of them. Basically, how this came to be is I was already thinking about this concept of leftism as societal entropy. And then I saw a video of the woman in that, the female content creator there, where she was going off on this rant about fat phobia is the same thing as homophobia, xenophobia, classism, basically all of the oppression Olympic groups that you can possibly imagine, because being fat phobic has its roots in all of these other sort of discriminatory attitudes throughout history. And so if you are not sufficiently, pro fat, then you're also probably all of these other terrible words, racist, xenophobic, etc.
Just a quick question, Dane. You said xenophobia, racism, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
yes.
Okay. Okay. So my question is, she's saying that none of those people chose to be that color, and that's why they were attacked. But so she didn't have a choice in being large, so she's just like them. So again, before we get too far into this, I just want to keep the score running, okay? So she has a video that just totally shits over a company, right? Am I getting that so far so good? For not having the sizes.
Correct. Yes, that's what he was responding to. Yes.
Okay. So then he comes on, and instead of calling her an asshole for doing that and then ranting and raving about how she's acting inappropriately, he actually comes on and says, hey, you might have misstepped here. And then after doing that, he doesn't make fun of her. He doesn't do any of the xenophobic anything like that. He offers a reason why she was in that problem. And then he offered 3 different solutions. 3. And
which,
all of them plausible.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
By the way, and not even that difficult. The first one was simply buy your clothes online. He didn't even lead with the hardest one for all of us, right? Is completely make different lifestyle choices. He just said, buy your clothes online.
Or hold her accountable for being that way.
Right.
Again, I don't. And the whole time, by the way, if we have any, audio only people, she's sitting there making faces like he's not being helpful.
Yeah.
Like all the things that he's saying is like, and then I think I read in the comments, I think her thing was like, get your stats right before you come attack me or some shit, was the gist of her comment in that section. It's like, I don't need to get my stats right, dude. I can get my shirt. And if I can't get it there, I have other ways of acquiring it. And also, I didn't bring that fucking problem to the goddamn world by putting it on the internet. So, rule number 1, another, helpful hint for this person. If you don't want to be called out, shut the fuck up and figure your shit out by yourself. Otherwise, if you want to put this out there, people might have a differing opinion. Just ask the people or the boys at WMD podcast. Nobody agrees with us. That's why we are at the 120th podcast of Australia.
And we're constantly fighting permabans on all platforms.
Right. And all we're being like is ourselves. Like, oh, you guys just hate us that much. Interesting. But but no, again, and I like how you chose this clip just because it's that microcosm of the whole attitude of that side. It's like, you made this problem. You wanted everyone to be on your side about this problem for you. And then when people weren't on your side, you called them everything under the book. But if the other side were to call you that one word that you can't be called, then you'd fly off on a tangent.
Of course. Right. So yes, no, that's exactly right. And, you really got to the heart of it at the very beginning, David, when you're like, listen, all of those other categories, racism, xenophobia, homophobia, all those kind of things that you were born with those things, those weren't necessarily choices, at least, again, if we're going to, take their sort of whole talking points about this kind of thing. But one of these things is not like the other. And the thing that's not like the other is the choices that you make about not being active or the things you put in your face. But again, setting all of that aside, I want to just say on the front end, first of all, based on that other clip that was different from this, but, her content, I can tell you that she is firmly ingrained in the left. This whole idea of, oppression is everywhere. I'm systemically oppressed, even though she's got 1.8 million followers on TikTok, and I'm sure she has brand deals. And I've seen her on, she's got clips on her page of her appearing on, talk shows with Jennifer Hudson, and she's very oppressed for her race and her size and yada yada yada. But but the fact that she would put, like I said, homophobia, racism, xenophobia, all the favorite buzzwords in with classism tells you that she is a dyed-in-the-wool cultural or neo-Marxist. Even if she doesn't have any idea what those words means, that's what she is. This whole oppression, lattice work that they have created for themselves to be constant victims is built on this whole idea of class warfare coming straight out of Marx. Now, for Clarkson's point, I don't know much about him at all. I did look at a little bit of his content, and I would say that he's probably, I don't know how he would self-identify, but I wouldn't necessarily put him on the left, so to speak. So when I get into the point later in this episode about, leftism being cultural entropy and them eating themselves and all of that kind of stuff, people might come in the comments and be like, well, Clarkson's not on the left and da-da-da-da-da. I don't know that for a fact. I don't think that that's the case with him. But to David's point, we're using the way her thought process is, and then the way she reacts so dismissively and arrogantly to somebody that is providing a legitimate, in-depth discussion about her talking points. She doesn't have to agree with him, but he didn't mischaracterize what she had to say. He didn't call her names. He didn't, say anything negative about her. I mean, she can take the part at the end negatively where he said, the third option is take more accountability for how you live your life, and maybe you wouldn't be in this situation. She can take that negatively if she wants, but on its face, even the worst, most offensive thing that he said to her in that whole thing was not a personal attack in any way, shape, or form. But why, but I'm going to get in after, a little exchange here with David. why is this cultural entropy? That's where we're going with it. But I didn't know if David had any more thoughts on it before we get into that.
I mean, it's just the thing that we say here all the time. It's Occam's razor. Usually, it's the simplest answer that solves your problem or that tells you what the problem is caused by. Like, there's a million things you can't control about that company. But there's one thing that's definitely standing in your way that you definitely control every second of your life. And it's you. You can control what you do. And I'm not going to hear it anymore. I don't agree with it. There you go, Dane. Exactly. Well done. He's got pictures. But again, and that's the thing that I can't stand about them is that there used to be a mentality in this country that you pick yourself up by your bootstraps, you keep working hard, and things generally work out. It's not, I complain enough and I eventually get my way. Because and again, just to bring it back to, preschool or high school or school level, like if there was a whiner in your group, you know what wasn't there for long? A whiner in your group. You're not fun. You're not cool to hang out with. So when you come to somebody and you're like, we've all had one of those friends. Like every time you meet up with them, they're like, oh man, I got this going. It's such a shitty thing. Like I can't handle it. And then you're like, well, why don't you just take a step back? Like go like talk to that person and like put this all, no, I can't do that. And then year after year, all you hear is about this, my boyfriend or my girlfriend or this, that, it's like, well, then break up with them. If you can't make it work, then I don't want to hear this shit anymore. They're like, no, but I could. And then eventually you're just like, dude, I'm done. I'm out of here. I've offered you every way out of the situation. You clearly don't want to be in it. You're reveling in it. And you think that it's cool to make it everyone else's problem. And eventually people just get sick of listening to you. And that's on a minor scale. If that happens on a countrywide scale, that's going to be a problem too.
Yeah. And that is what the idea, this constant, again, victimhood, oppression, this ideology of class warfare. And, and the reason why the modern iteration of leftist progressivism has its roots in Marxism is because Marx was one of the first, he wasn't the first, but he was one of the first, I guess, thinkers, for lack of a better term. I wouldn't necessarily qualify much of his screeds as actual thinking, but he was one of the first people to create this sort of class warfare narrative. Right? It's the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, and when Marx was writing, it was just about economic differences in people. It was the people that had the power and the people that didn't have the power. The capitalists versus the international, communist brotherhood. And basically what modern leftist progressivism have done is they have taken that framework and they have multiplied it and applied it to all kinds of different ways to divide people. Now it's the fat or overweight or the what's some of the other terms they use for themselves, the overcaloried versus those of us who aren't. Yeah, the plus size versus those of us who aren't.
And by the way, hold on. Before we go, this isn't a one-off, by the way. There's multiple influencers that literally show you, hey, we went on a trip. This is a fat-friendly place. This is not a fat-friendly place. They start with the airline. They go, this seat isn't big enough. Well, guess what? That seat has been big enough for everybody from 1950 to fucking now. So guess what? Who had the problem? And it's not, and then they just go, well, this restaurant was good. It had a lot of tasty seats. But then again, the booths weren't quite big enough for 300 plus people. So it's a 5 out of 10. And then they go here, and then we wanted to ride jet ski. Or no, this is the best one. We wanted to go parasailing, but they said we were too heavy. So down with that one. It's like, you're the one that doesn't fit. Like if you want to be a part of this, fit. Don't revel in the fact that you don't, and don't expect all of us to change everything just for you. Like, you're either a part of the solution or you're a part of the problem.
Yeah. But yeah, it's patriarchy versus matriarchy. It's, cisgender versus non-cisgender. It's, all along down the line, it's creating one class of people who are the oppressors and the other class who is the oppressed. And the reason why this is a perfect or entropy is a perfect explanation for why this is because, as we've talked about on the show before, leftism is full of people with the mindset that do not have the strength of character, the will, the discipline, the perseverance to build. They are not builders. They are not the ones who look to the future. They have very, very short time preferences in terms of meeting their needs. They're the ones who will, $1 today is $1 spent, forget about, saving for tomorrow, that kind of stuff. Just the whole mentality is a very materialistic, what can I get from the world now? There's no concern about legacy. There's no concern about building for a better future, other than the one major caveat to that is the
green movement. Dane, the green movement. We have to save the world, Dane.
The infinite march of progressivism, which is the only thing they'll look to the future is, how can I make the world look more like me tomorrow? Or whatever I think is righteous with the world. But in terms of like building up institutions and policies and standards for society and all of that kind of stuff, that's what they're always trying to tear down, right? The age-old battle between conservatism, and I'm not talking about Republicans, not conserving a damn thing. I'm talking about people, your average, everyday run-of-the-mill person who says, yeah, I think I'm a conservative. They want to conserve things. They want to build. They will delay gratification now in planning for the future and that kind of thing. So, leftism is really just, it's this. It is constant destruction of society. They have no way to fulfill themselves by building or looking to the future. And so what do? They come along and they're the ones that kick down the kid's sandcastle at the beach. That's how they get fulfillment. That's how they are, make themselves happier in their lives. And they are the ones that are the driving forces between entropy, because conservatives, or people that are more legacy, long-term minded, are the ones that are building. They are the upward trend in the empire. And then once the empire peaks, it's the leftists that kind of take over, and they just want to tear down everything that was built. And then you have societal decline, ultimately collapse, and around human societies go for forever.
I think a nice little, I don't know if this ties in quite as well as I think it does, but we're going to give it a whirl. So it's kind of like the mentality that everyone has on the coast, the coastal elites, so to speak. What do they refer to the Midwest as?
Flyover country.
Correct. Yeah. So, and what do they make in New York City? Let's just take New York City, because I've talked to a couple of New Yorkers in the past. Let's just say. And how do they view people that come from the state that we came from, Kansas? They're like, what do you country bumpkins do out there? Like, you all just tip over cows and get drunk, and that's all you do? Is like, well, yeah, I guess you could say that. We do that. And we do impregnate a lot of people along the way with maybe a lot of inebriation. But what we also do is we grow things. We grow things that you put in your fucking face that makes you that large. So, and then what do you do in New York that's so important? Well, I work on Wall Street, and we buy and sell things, and we are the heart of the economy around the world. It's like, okay, that sounds good right now, until all of a sudden you need your plumbing fixed. Can you do that by yourself? No? Okay, well then it looks like you might need somebody that's not as educated as you. Do you need to feed yourself because the power went out? Can you do that? No, you can't. So all of a sudden, you're smart in all the things that don't matter anymore. That if the light got clicked off tomorrow, you're fucked. So what I'm trying to describe is, as long as everything is working perfectly, this ideology, i.e. the entropy, fits. If it doesn't work the way that it's supposed to, or that it has been, then you guys are super fucked. Because what doesn't matter anymore when the Ukrainian flag is in your bio, and then all of a sudden you're hearing about a draft. Like, so how serious were you about supporting Ukraine? You want to get over there? You want to get muddy? You want to get dirty? Or was it just a platitude that you put in your thing to make sure that everybody else that you likes you back? Yeah. It's that whole mentality. Like you said, conservatism is in the Midwest. Democracy or what would you say? With liberalism, I guess we'll just refer to it as, is in the coastals, or the coast, pretty much. So pick your poison, which way you want to go. But I'd suggest maybe dabbling in both. Maybe be smart in that. But then also don't call all the people that are growing your food for you fucking morons, and vice versa. Don't call them coastal elites like, oh, those mind virus dumbasses. Like, well, you might need them too, because we're all in this together. That's basically what I was trying to say. But it's a microcosm that grows into a countrywide problem, which grows into a country problem, a problem in the country.
Right. And I want to make a distinction between three different groups of people, actually. The conservatives on the one hand, liberals on another hand, and then leftist progressives on another on the third hand. Is that, like you said, the conservatives are the ones that are the builders. They're the ones that are, delaying gratification to put off into the future. They're the ones that are, having kids, building families, doing all of that kind of stuff. But a society is healthy when it has both that and liberalism, because liberalism is, this kind of view that, well, we want to just let 1,000 flowers bloom. We want to, experiment as much as possible. And that's how you get innovation. That's how, humanity moves forward, is by thinking outside the box and pushing the envelope and all that kind of stuff. And that is typically going to come from more of the liberal worldview. The third group, like I said, that leftist progressive group, is wholly anathema to both of those, because although there is a role for conservatism and there is a role for liberalism in, pushing a society forward and increasing standards of living for as many people as possible and that kind of thing, this leftist progressivism that is, this mind virus that is just constantly destroy whatever was built, there's no place for that anywhere, because, again, going back to the definition of entropy, it takes a lot of work, energy, and effort to build a society up, right? And let's think about feminism for one example, how, they just dismiss men completely out of hand. We don't need men. What are men for? Whatever. And
Modern
then when
day
you look
feminism.
when you look at the trades, 95+% of the people that are wiring your power lines and paving your roads and building your houses and doing all that kind of stuff, is men. But again, the kind of, modern leftist progressive feminist mind virus is all of that is taken for granted. They just woke up one day, snapped their fingers, and there's no thought, there's no appreciation, there's no sort of, appreciation, covers it pretty well, for how did all this get here? I have a really
how does it
comfortable
stay here,
life.
by the way?
Yeah. How do we maintain it so that we don't lose it? No question about that. It's just men are trash. We don't need men. If society was completely rid of men tomorrow, we'd be perfectly fine. No, you wouldn't. And that's the same sort of thing that David was just talking about with the whole New York versus flyover state thing. These mega cities that we think of as just like normal for, major, especially developed, countries in the Western world that have all of the bells and whistles and all the fancy lights and everything going on, those cities wouldn't last a week without the people growing their food, the trucks transporting it to them, the people maintaining their sewage system, maintaining their electrical infrastructure, doing all of the hard manual labor that it takes to build. Right? Entropy. It takes more energy to create order out of chaos than it does to create chaos. There's just no appreciation for any of that. And that attitude, which you saw in the clip of this woman, when he's trying to say, here's something that's happening. You're not oppressed. You're not a victim. These companies aren't out to get you. It's a simple matter of supply and demand. As many people that do fit into your overweight category, which you seem to think it's tons and tons and tons, and to his point, it is more by the day, it seems like, it's not enough to justify having sizes going up to triple, quadruple, quintuple XL. Most of the people that those companies are going to sell to are double XL and down. So that's who they're going to dedicate their manufacturing processes to doing. They're going to build those sizes, and they're going to save a little bit of their manufacturing process to have a few of the clothes, and they're going to sell those to you online. Really simple. Not some crazy thing that's out just to get you, but what was her reaction to that? Completely dismissive. How dare they? The world needs to revolve around me, even though some of it might already be doing that.
What's funny is that he literally was just going, "You're in the shallow end. Just stand up. And she's going, oh my God, he doesn't get it, does he? Or excuse me. Like, he's literally like, no, exactly. He's like, and he's being nice about it. He's not being like, hey, you fucking idiot, stand up. He's like, hey, stand up. 1 foot or 2, it doesn't matter. Just stand up and you'll be able to breathe. What an idiot. So go ahead, stay down there. Again, it's like, it's funny that they call themselves progressives because everything they introduce sets them back about, I don't know, to the Stone Age. If they're on their side, they can't define what a woman is.
Yeah.
We've had that figured out for a while. I figured that out before kindergarten. I was like, I think that's a girl. And I think that's my mom. Like, and I think that's my dad. Because he has a thing that I've got. And I don't. Anyway, don't worry about how I figured out about sexual education. All right? We'll just kick it back over to Dane and act like that never happened.
And, part of the reason why I brought up this other video, which again, we didn't play for you, but just some of her other content, where she was saying, fat phobia is homophobia and xenophobia and all this kind of stuff, is even though, like I said, Clarkson doesn't seem to be a leftist, the fact that, I can say, I was going to say, I don't want to say that he's gay just because of his mannerisms, but I do. I clicked his bio and it had the rainbow flag in it, all that kind of stuff. So
maybe he just supports them, Dane. You don't know that.
I'm
don't
pretty
assume,
sure.
By the way, assuming his pronouns, Dane,
it
gets better.
Is based on her other video, right? If all of it's interconnected, then to hate on one is to hate on them all. And actually, I'm slightly paraphrasing. She said almost exactly that.
Phobia means fear.
Is that when you don't support fat people, you are also not supporting all of these other groups. Now, she's in quite a conundrum with that whole thought process because she had a gay guy who, I don't know what the order of priority is in the oppression Olympics. Are you more oppressed if you're gay or are you more oppressed if you're fat? We're going to have her answer that one for us.
We should have a battle. We should have a battle royale between all the oppressive groups, like the fat phobia, the gay phobia, this phobia. Not the people that have it, but the people that claim it. That'd be interesting. So, one battle to see who the biggest victim is.
So based on that, does that mean that his critique of her position, which she was offended enough by to just be completely arrogantly dismissive of it, does that make him not entitled to his oppression under homophobia? Or does that make him also, since it's all tied together and he didn't openly and full-throatedly support her fat phobia point, that means he's also homophobic against himself? Or, you see, that's entropy within the human mind. It is a thought process and an ideology that generates chaos. And so when we kind of sit back and we laugh, as those of us who aren't in this group, and again, this includes not only conservatives, libertarians, but also liberals who don't buy into the whole progressive leftist nonsense. When we sit back and we look at them eating themselves, we just kind of, get this smirk on our faces like, it's pretty
that's
funny.
Bad luck, Brian.
Is that that's not a bug, that's a feature when they eat themselves, because again, it's all chaos. The thought process down to its basic level, the ideology is premised on chaos. It is just me, the world revolves around me, I need to get what I want, and everybody else be damned. And if I can use, catchy little sloganeerings or coalition building by just saying my particular phobia is synonymous with these 8 other phobias, then I'll do that. But as soon as one other person belongs to those, well, then I don't know what happens to my ideology, but it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Again, phobia.
Chaos.
What's rife throughout that entire side too is misappropriating words.
Yeah.
Like phobia, like homophobia. It's homophobic to say something. It's like, I'm not worried that I'm going to get bit by a radioactive gay guy and turn gay. That's not a fear. I don't have that. I'm not afraid that if I get too close to a fat person, I might become fat, i.e. fat phobia. I just don't think that it's necessary for me to accept everything that comes out of your mouth at all times. Otherwise, I'm this category. That's not a good way to have a conversation. It's not a good way to move towards solutions. And speaking of solutions, they're never interested in that. These videos are never interested in solving the problem. Like, hey, how do I open this jar of pickles is basically what she asked. And he goes, oh, you could either like warm it up or you could hit it on the bottom. My grandma showed me this technique that like if you hit it on the top of the spoon, she's like, oh my God, this guy is showing me how to open up a packet of pickles. All I wanted was free pickles. Like, just give me all the pickles and I'll figure out how to open them up. It's like, well, then just say you wanted the free pickles. Because I'm helping you solve your problem and you weren't interested in solving your own problem. You just wanted to let everyone else know that you had a problem. Okay, we all got problems. Like, let's keep going.
Yeah.
World doesn't stop for our problems and it's not going to stop for yours.
Exactly. And, you know, where does this come from in their ideology? And there's a great book on this by Thomas Sowell. It's called A Conflict of Visions. And what Sowell's thesis in that book is there's two primary ways to look to that people look out onto the world with: the constrained vision and the unconstrained vision. And the constrained vision is the idea that human beings are finite, that they have certain innate characteristics, and that within human nature as it is, basically taking the world as it is, take human beings as they are, you know, people with the constrained vision accept that and they say, okay, now how can I create institutions? These are people that are highly focused on incentives. You can probably guess based on this explanation where David and I fall in the constrained versus unconstrained. And given this set of parameters, you create incentives, you try to create institutions to encourage the better angels within human nature. You want to try to reduce as much as societally possible the things that magnify the dark parts of our nature, and you want to incentivize us to act voluntarily on the good side of our nature. But underlying all of it is the fundamental acceptance of the real and basic fact is that human beings have a nature to them and that they will act in certain ways, they will respond to incentives, things like that. That's the constrained vision. The unconstrained vision is this idea that human beings are infinitely malleable and that they can be perfected, and that the way to perfect them is to institute a policy, even if it requires force. This is why totalitarian regimes tend to be much more of the unconstrained vision sort of way, is that human beings are just this far away from being perfect. We just need to tweak this policy a little bit more. We need to put a couple more people against the wall. We need to throw a couple more people in cages, just a little bit more. And if we turn the knobs and levers just right, then we can perfect humanity, we can have utopia, et cetera, et cetera. And you can probably see, based on those two ways to view the world and human interaction, which one is going to lend more towards disorder and chaos. Because if you have one individual who wants ultimate power because they want to make the world and take it down path A, and another person wants to take it down path B, and every person on planet Earth is unique, that unconstrained vision will create constant conflict. Whereas if you take a step back and say human beings are what they are, we understand how they respond to incentives, we understand what human nature is, so here's the things we're going to set up as a society to encourage people to do the right thing, that is going to lead to more order and, you know, better quality of life and, you know, happier safety, security, et cetera. And the leftist sort of progressive worldview is an unconstrained vision of the world. It's an unconstrained vision of humanity. And that's why they're always at war with each other. That's why they are entropic, to use David's words. It is the constrained vision individuals that are building society, and then it's the unconstrained vision people that come in, take society for granted, and say, if I had the keys of the kingdom, I would make it this much better. And what they end up doing is driving the car off the cliff.
Well, I mean, like you said, it's. I think I saw a clip of CNN losing their minds that they're losing the young black vote, and they're losing black votes in general to Donald Trump. I think they said that 7% voted for him in the last election. And then I think it's gone up to like 14% are going to vote for him this time. And that was like, what was Biden's actual line when he was running this year? He was like, well, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. It's like
2020.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant. This
Last when he got elected. Yeah.
Correct. So I think that there's more to that than meets the eye or meets the ear, I guess you would say. They just assumed that they had the African American vote because they're downtrodden, and they've always been downtrodden. So of course we're the side that helps out the downtrodden. But they've been voting that way for a long time now. And where has it gotten them? They're still in the same spots that they were when they started voting for you guys. And the 1990, if you don't believe me, look up the 1994 crime bill and look at the author of that and who wrote that. So these guys, people aren't stupid. They're Thank you. People don't forget. Thank you. They've watched it just degrade, and they've watched you make false promises. They've watched you say that you're going to make their lives better. Just vote for me. I'm not going to raise taxes. I'm going to tax the rich. What did I just see on Biden's desk the other day, that he's going to increase the tax rate on us? Something he said he wasn't going to do.
Yeah.
He said he wasn't going to.
People that make over 2 or under 400 or something like that.
Oh, perfect.
A year.
That's what 80% of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then didn't he say he wasn't going to heighten any, or he definitely wouldn't use American weapons in Ukraine because that would lead to escalation? He definitely wouldn't escalate issues with China. He would handle the Afghanistan pullout. I mean, this is just one term. I'm just going off of the promises he made on one term. And everyone says, well, he's made more jobs. It's like, creating jobs by creating more government jobs is not fucking creating jobs. Like, you just made more of yourself and like, look at me, we're better now. Like, no, we're not. I mean, the people that work for you they're going to make a lot of our taxpayer money for doing very little at their job. From what I've heard from most government employees, aside from mailmen, you guys are good. I don't know. I don't know how long this can keep going until it has to have like a hard reset. Because it's gotten to the point where there's 2 different realities in this country, let alone just 2 different parties. There's 2 different realities in this country, and it's entropic, shall we say.
Yeah.
It's like that's what they. Yeah, exactly. This is fine.
Yeah. So, I really don't have much more to say about it than that. I mean, to the extent possible, if you are picking up, first of all, if you agree with Thomas Sowell's thesis, which I think it's probably pretty clear I do, maybe you don't, but I do think that there is this common thread running amongst the way people view the world, in one sense that, I'm limited in terms of what I can do. I'm a finite being. I'm not God, and that's another point about this whole thing is, this sort of God complex of the world needs to revolve around me. And that's kind of what she's talking about there, right? She's like, well, I'm double XL or I'm above double XL. Why aren't they selling my size clothes? Well, again, if you're listening to the counterpoint that maybe there's not as many of your size as you think, there's a lot more than there should be if we care at all about public health. But there's not as many as you think. And when you want, to Clarkson's point, when you want entire companies, entire segments of the economy to cater to you, I would say there's a tinge of God complex going on in you. And the God complex aspect is not a million miles removed from this unconstrained vision, because you just think that if you had a little bit more power, if you were calling a few more of the shots, if you were, king for more than a day, that you would be able to institute all these things. Like, what would she do her first day in office? Sign an executive order that all companies must make up to quadruple XL? That sort of God complex that you have is, to the extent you find these people in your life, I would say that their damage, that their ability to inflict harm on your life when they are just acquaintances or friends, is probably pretty limited. But if they're in a position of power or we're seeking it out, think long and hard before you throw your support behind a person like that, because not only is their thought process tyrannical, but the end result is entropy. It's chaos. It is taking what was taken for granted and tearing it all down.
And by the way, speaking of leaders, the leaders that are, championing, God, that's not an easy word to say, is it? Say that. Championing. Oh, fuck that word. Anyway, the guys that are on your side in the Capitol Hill and all the elected positions, they don't take you seriously either. They just use you as a tool. Again, exactly. So, just look at, they were all feminists. Like, AOC was super feminist, until all of a sudden the Victim Olympics this year landed on trans. Trans people need more help. They're the next victim. Now we need to introduce legislature to help trans people. Well, who got fucked then? The women. The women got fucked in all their sports. The women are getting pushed out of jobs now because we have to have the trans. So all this feministic movement that Dane was talking about that took over, that was moving in a general direction, now that's all stopped. Now it's fallen down. Now they're downtrodden. And again, because now they're not winning the Olympics, and it'll just keep going and going and going. And by the way, fat can't be healthy. And there's a lot of insurance companies out there. There's a lot of medical care that they need. And that's just going to get them on the cycle too. But I can go down that road. So it's almost like they want you to be that way. You're just a little, well, no, I won't say that. I'm trying to walk this tightrope. But once you're on that merry-go-round of the healthcare system, which if you're that big for that long, you will be. Now you're like a little wad of dollars that they're just going to suck every dollar out of you to keep you up and moving, but pharmaceutically, obviously, and then you're gone early. So again, it's not, they don't care about you, but they will use you. And if they are using you, trust and believe it won't be for long. Something else will come along. So again, a little accountability goes a long way. That's all I'll say. And that's my piece. So I'll kick it back over to Dane.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this will be a shorter clip for one of our other socials, because I don't have a lot to expound on outside of this, that we are at all-time lows of shame in this society. And the West started to fall when it made the eradication of shame its highest ideal. Because now we are down to this level where, I mean, look what she had put on her video as he was talking, is, I don't know when it became popular to try to humble me. First of all, humility is not a bad word. We should all have a fair amount of it. And if you are taking any sort of disagreement with your point as somebody just hopping on a trend to try to humble you, like you're above being humbled,
Lizzo,
we need to inject a lot more shame back into the society, because then we would have not near as much, wild shit going on as we do now. If that was the case, I was going to make that clippish, but I actually ended up going on too long. God dang it. I'll never get this fixed.
You know what, Dane? Knock it off. When you're trying to make a clip, it'll never come. It's like a washed pot. It never boils. Just let the clips come naturally. Just let them flow out of you. Don't be aiming for it, all right?
I'll be flowy.
Yes, be flowy.
Like water.
So anyway, Dane, with all that being said, where can they find episode 199 and Weapons of Meme Destruction?
You can find this episode at wmdpodcast.com/199. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. They can get the video replay on YouTube, X, Rumble, and they can also get it on Odyssey. They can link up with us on our other socials, X, Instagram, TikTok, private members only Facebook page at $5 a month or more of support. Make sure to go over to WMDpodcast.com and sign up for that email list so that you can always stay in contact with the show. And, do the free stuff for the algo food. Like, subscribe, share, follow, comment on the videos. Do it live to join in on the discussion, and do it later to, argue with each other. Either way, everything you are doing to help grow the sane space, we appreciate you. We love you. And, let's make a freer world together.
And with all that being said, guys, until next week, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.